Hello, everyone. Welcome to the DMV Business Show. I'm your host, Otto Sevilla, and today our special guest is Chris May. Chris is the founder and CEO of Quadrant Advisory. Thank you for coming on the show, Chris. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, Otto. I appreciate you having me. I'm really excited to dig in here and talk a little bit about my background and our business and what we're focusing on, and hopefully add some value to the community and to the listeners.
Thank you. So I like to first start off, just to give the audience a general idea, did you grow up in the DMV, DC, Maryland, Virginia area, or where are you from originally?
Total transplant. I'm sure you hear that far too often, right? But no, I originally grew up in New Orleans, Louisiana, and fortuitously ended up in DC after college by way of this is where I got a job. And have been here now for almost 13 years and is home now, married with a young baby, live in Alexandria, Virginia, and love the DMV area. Like I said, it's home. So.
Oh, that's great. So you said originally from New Orleans, Louisiana, right?
That's right.
Okay. So all childhood, I guess, all the way through high school, then is that when you left?
So that's right. Yeah. So, bounced around a little bit when I was younger. My dad was in the Air Force. And so spent some time in Tampa, Florida, and then Atlanta, Georgia, and then ultimately settled in the New Orleans area. He got out of the military, and that's where he was born and raised. And so that's where we, set up for the home, to sort of raise the family. I've got an older sister, was there until I was 18, and then went off to school in not too far away in Mississippi to a school called Ole Miss. And then from there, found my way. Actually, I had a very small pit stop in New York where I went and worked at a hedge fund, thought I was going to do the whole Wall Street thing. And that was 2008, 2009. Everything crumbled there. All of the financial institutions were, belly up, and that included the one that I was at. And then so just sort of had my hat in my hand looking for a job, and DC is where I ended up. And so spent about 3 or 4 months in New York before ending up here in DC.
Okay, great. There's so much to get into now. Before that, growing up in New Orleans, I guess, so you went to all these different places as far as you said Atlanta and other cities you mentioned, and then you ended up in New Orleans?
Right.
Okay, how old were you when you came to New Orleans?
About 4 years old, so it was
okay.
Pretty young. Yeah, it was when I was in Tampa, Florida, then Atlanta, Georgia, then New Orleans. But New Orleans is where I grew up, the vast majority of my life. Yeah, and my folks are still there, and that is my hometown. Yeah.
How was it growing up there in New Orleans? How were you as a child? Do you remember as far as what were you into? What did you like?
Yeah, I mean, not too different from the way I am now, I guess, personality-wise, very into sports and outgoing and always out playing and learning and, just trying to meet other kids and get involved around the neighborhood and, play literally every sport I could under the sun. And so, I had a very typical sort of American, upbringing, if you will. Doing all those sorts of things, and it was great learning experiences. And like I said, I haven't changed that much. I don't think if you were to look at some like tape of me as like a 6-year-old or 8-year-old running around down there in Louisiana versus now, you'd be like, oh yeah, that's definitely the same kid.
Do you remember growing up, as far as, did you have a favorite sport that you like to play or at least watch?
Baseball was sort of my first love, and that's what I ended up sticking with, throughout my teenage years. Gave it up, in high school and when I went off to college. But definitely baseball. I played, like I said, everything: football, basketball, soccer. I did the traveling thing with soccer all over the country. I played football, and funny story around that. I played what was called wing back. That was sort of like a running back for this type of offense that we ran in this, Pee Wee football league. And I remember there was this one guy in the league who everyone feared, right? He was one kid. We were like 8. And I remember I had the ball and I came around the side and I got hit so hard. And I was like looking out of my ear hole of the football helmet. And I ended up quitting that season because I was so jarred from that incident. But that person who hit me ended up being a guy named Matt Forte, who played for the Chicago Bears for like 10 years.
Oh, wow.
Back on that, I say, okay, I don't feel so bad about quitting based off of that interaction because, you know, he was just stud athlete.
Even at such a young age, that's amazing to hear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a good lesson to be learned, I guess.
Okay, so you definitely weren't playing flag or touch football. It was full on tackling and everything.
Look,
Okay.
I mean, this was early 90s, if you will. So a lot of these concussion protocol, CTE type stuff was not even on the radar at the time. But luckily, you know, it just ended up not being my cup of tea. And I stuck to basketball, soccer, baseball, with baseball being my primary focus.
And with baseball, what position did you play?
Mostly second base and center field.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I was sort of that like leadoff guy, fast, known to steal bases. I wasn't going to hit a bunch of home runs, but be sort of utilitarian and play a different position and be quick on the bases.
Were you also playing first baseball like in high school, or was it just like other leagues outside of school?
No, I was growing up, you know, throughout Little League and then also into high school as well. I played on the high school team too. So
Okay. Okay. And then you were also, you mentioned you were very social and outgoing as a child.
Yeah. I mean, look, I just sort of, I'm very type A, driven, go, you know, move fast and break things kind of personality, I guess. And I was very much that way as a child as well. So, you know, I learned some things the hard way and, you know, bruised myself and did all those sorts of things. But I will say I was still very risk averse, even though I was sort of hard charging and always out exploring and doing something, you know, activity wise. I never went to the hospital, never broke a bone, never had a cast. Somehow I navigated my own personality and balanced it with this risk averseness that, you know, really came in handy in a lot of ways. And again, I still think I sort of have some of those same tendencies now in business, right? And so it's sort of been innate, which I'm very fortunate, I think, for that personality trait to have, you know, been a part of myself from an early age.
Definitely. At a young age, were you also any entrepreneurial signs back then that you can remember or recollect?
Yeah, I was always doing grass cutting. That was my first entrepreneurial endeavor. And I want to give, you know, shout out to my mom and dad, really encouraged it. My dad sort of showed me the ropes on how to do this all properly and, you know, edge and blow and weed eat, you know, all that stuff, not just do a regular cut. And my mom really had a lot of business savvy around how to, you know, sales and negotiation. She was really good at that stuff. And so they sort of coached me up and encouraged me to go out there. And man, I was just hitting the pavement and going door to door in the neighborhood, knocking on doors. Hey, $20, I'll cut your yard. And before you know it, I had like 8 or 9 accounts, right? Where they were like, hey, come back next week or in 2 weeks. And it was a nice little business. And so I'd always be pushing all, I didn't have a truck, obviously. I didn't have anything other than my feet. And I was, you know, maybe 10 or 12 years old at the time. And so I sort of had the lawnmower and my backpack blower and all the weed or stuff all piled up and just walking down the street with it all over the neighborhoods. But that was sort of my first entrepreneurial endeavor and just sort of taught me the value of hard work. And I mean, honestly, I probably knocked on 120 doors before I got like 2 accounts. And so, you know, I think there were some good lessons there as well.
I love that, especially at such a young age. You mentioned 10 or 12, you were knocking on doors and, you know, I don't know if you were just pitching the services or handing out some kind of flyer or marketing material to them, but that's great to hear.
Yeah, it was, I had no marketing materials. I had no elevator pitch or spiel. I think I refined it in real time, right? Like on the job.
Yeah.
But it was literally just knock, knock, knock. Yeah, son, what do you want? You know, looking like your grass needs to be cut. I'd love if you let me do it for $20 and, you know, that sort of thing, just off the cuff. So.
And you would do it all by yourself, Chris, or did you eventually have any helpers or anything like that?
No, it was all by myself. Just doing it on my own. You know, a handful of lawns a week. You know, on the weekends or in the evenings, and that was sort of how I started doing it. So.
That's good. I have young kids of my own, and you know nowadays it's all about tablets for them, and it's just tablets, and I'm trying to teach them that part as far as knocking. And I put my oldest one in Cub Scouts because of that. because part of it is you have to go knock door to door, or you have to do certain events like at an indoor mall. This is pre-COVID, of course, and then you would sell popcorn. And to take that sort of fear and it's helped out tremendously. And then to just practice, like you said, then, you know, the 10th and 20th door doesn't look so scary anymore because you've done it.
That's great. I'm glad to hear that you're doing that. I've got a young daughter as well, and I definitely plan to try to instill those values. Because look, you know, you're going to get turned down a lot in life in many different ways. And it's how you pick yourself up, move ahead, don't get discouraged. It's how you respond to that really matters. And if you can, the earlier in life you can sort of learn that and not be afraid of failure, the better.
Exactly. I agree 100%. So you live in New Orleans and you go to Ole Miss, which it's a big into football. It's a big football college, right?
Big into football, but we're not good very often. But it has a rich history in football and some famous, you know, the Mannings and some other folks that have come out of there. But you know, we're no LSU or Alabama or something like that. That's for sure. But we have a good time.
Chris, wasn't there a movie? I forgot. I think he went to, yes, right? Wasn't he in Ole Miss?
He was, yeah. It was centered around.
I forgot. Michael something.
Michael Orr.
Yeah, from the Ravens.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah, that's why I was like, that name rings a bell. Yeah, okay, I saw that movie. That was a great movie.
Yeah, it was a really good movie. I should watch it again. I haven't watched it in a couple of years.
By any chance, were you guys together in school or no?
We actually did overlap, I believe. I mean, I didn't know him personally, but I do think we overlapped a year or two. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So when you're at Ole Miss, do you know right away before even entering there for freshman what you want to do, or did you sort of find yourself there?
I was all over the place. Honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do. I thought I wanted to go into law for a long time. You know, then I was in finance, and then, you know, I sort of changed my mind and wanted to do real estate, and I had no clue, to be honest. And I even, you know, went as far as taking the LSAT and studying for that, thinking, okay, law is what I'm going to do. And it just turned out, I don't know, I can't tell you exactly what happened, but I just had this awakening, like, I do not want to be a lawyer. You know, I don't like reading super long documents and getting into the minutia like that, much more high level strategic type thinking. And so it took a lot of, you know, guessing and checking and changing my major, and I ended up settling on a double major in finance and economics.
Okay. All right. Great. So then you graduate with a major in econ and finance, and then from there, is that where you head to New York City, or?
Yeah, so I went up to New York. It was actually between, this is common at SEC schools because of football seasons and all this stuff. I actually had an extra semester I had 4.5 years, right, in school. Okay. And I had a couple of classes left in Oxford on the back end. But so I actually went to New York that summer before I graduated college. And that's where I did the deal in New York and ended up coming back, finishing school, and, you know, then coming up to DC after that. So it was, you know, very short-lived stint in New York, working in finance and working at that hedge fund. Learned a lot. Learned that sort of that world up there in Wall Street wasn't necessarily for me, but I did enjoy the finance aspect and analyzing companies and looking at businesses from that angle. I liked that a lot, and so sort of took that away from that experience.
That's interesting. I also majored in finance here, and I went to University of Maryland in College Park.
Yeah.
And my goal was, I remember sending some resumes to Chicago and more into New York City. And I've always also had an interest in finance, hedge fund, private equity. Then I met my wife a couple months prior to graduation, but I always tell her it's her fault I stayed around this area, but not really. But that's always been an interest of mine. And it's not that easy getting your foot in the door as far as in the hedge fund or private equity or even venture capital type of world. How were you able to do that?
Yeah, look, I mean, it is sort of it's a you know, closed door type of fraternity, if you will, and it shouldn't be that way. It's not the way it should be out here, and, you know, very talented people who aren't able to you know, follow that path. And I got very fortunate that I had one of those doors open through a friend of a friend whose dad worked at this fund, and I met him actually at a football game at Ole Miss. He's the chief operating officer of this fund. I met him at the football game. I guess I made a good impression on him and just threw myself at the mercy and said, this is really what I want to do. Can you help me out? And he threw me a bone and gave me an opportunity. But the world had other plans because it was very short-lived and didn't work out. And I'm glad because where we are now, where the business is now, and have my beautiful wife right here. So I'm a better man because of it. But to answer your question, it's definitely not an easy egg to crack. It's hard to get in there. You have to finagle your way through a relationship or go to MIT or Yale or Harvard or something of that nature. And so me going to Ole Miss and being this little Southern boy, my only way in was to try to meet somebody who would take a chance on me.
Sure.
So.
And that was only I know you said it was a brief stint. Was it just over the summer that you were there?
Yeah, so it was basically like May through September. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, obviously, it's great it didn't work out. You are where you are now, but you saw some things there that wasn't exactly what you expected. If you don't mind sharing or what you're comfortable sharing, what were some of the pros and cons there once you ended up in New York City there with hedge funds?
Well, I think they're twofold. I think New York specifically from a location standpoint wasn't an ideal living situation for me. A funny story. I remember I went to the grocery store the first week I was there, and I didn't recalibrate how I was going to grocery shop for New York. And I had to walk 10 blocks to get back to my apartment. And so I filled up my basket as if I was about to walk out to my car and put everything in there. And I was halfway through checkout, oh wow, I made a big mistake. I have to put half of these back and come back more often and do different types of shopping that way. So anyway, one, New York was just a little bit different beast than what I was, really looking for and looking to venture out to personally. But then two, that hedge fund world, it was very cutthroat, first off. And secondly, there's a lot of opaqueness to sort of how all this trading is happening, and there wasn't any underlying value being created in the form of new jobs or more other shareholder value or expanding a business and seeing those tangible results. The way that the fund that I worked at operated, it was high frequency trading of derivatives contracts, right? And so you're basically just trading electronic paper on pennies on the dollar, trying to make a
spread
penny 500 million times, right? Something like that. And just spread, find the arbitrage in the spread and double down on it very quickly. And whoever had the fastest computers would settle trades quicker and get, these better spreads. And so that particular taste was just different. I was okay, I want to be involved in a business that you see tangible value being added, right? Other than dollar signs.
Yeah. And it sounds like a quant fund.
It was, yeah. It was a quant algorithm fund. It was sort of in those days when that was, it's very common now, but 2008, 2009, it was just starting to really be this sexy corner of Wall Street where, everything is running on algorithms and the faster your servers are and your computers are and your programs are, the better. I remember the best trader at our fund had no finance background. He was a computer software and guy with a minor in physics. And he was he can do the Rubik's Cube. He held the world record at one point for doing the Rubik's Cube. It was absolutely out of my league when it comes to that sort of brain power stuff. So
yeah, I understand. And then from there, how'd you end up from New York to DC, you said?
So when the fund ended up going under, and I, ended up finishing out my time in college at Ole Miss, I just shopped around my resume to anyone and everyone. I knew I didn't want to go back to Louisiana. I knew I wanted to be in a bigger city. New York wasn't the right place, but DC, Atlanta, Houston, Chicago, one of those types of cities to go and sort of spread my wings for my professional life. And man, I don't even know, 100 interviews and phone calls. And I actually got offered a couple of jobs that they weren't the right fit. And I was in no position to turn down jobs, but something told me, hey, just hold on and just keep doing what you're doing. And just by happenstance, found a job with a firm here in DC that was somebody that I met from college who, answered the phone or answered an email and got me in touch with somebody else in DC type of thing. And ended up working in a corporate finance position in an international public policy consulting and management consulting firm here in DC. And that sort of pivoted me into more of a corporate finance role. And that's sort of what started my career trajectory here.
That's great. And how long were you there for in that role?
About 2 years. So
Okay.
it was 2 years in DC. And like I said, that I really got to learn from my first boss. His name was Todd Erdenson. Great guy, very, very smart, CPA by training, but very savvy as a CFO. And running this company had multiple entities with a holding company structure. And so there was a lot of complexity to some of the transactions and some of the inner workings of the business. And so I got to shadow him and learn from him, which was really a treat.
Okay, great. And then from there, what happened afterwards?
So from there, I left that firm to go work for Lockheed Martin, and really thought, okay, I needed to get this blue chip firm name on my resume now, right? I sort of did the sexy New York hedge fund thing. I learned a lot from this public affairs and consulting firm in DC. But not too many people knew the names of those companies outside of those orbits, and so I ended up getting accepted into something called the Finance Leadership Development Program, which was a lot of Fortune 500 companies have these days where you are able to get a new rotation every 6 months. You have a new assignment, and you see different aspects of the finance department, and so I was accepted into that, which was really great. And was able to see the inner workings of a Fortune 500 multinational publicly traded company from many different facets.
After that 6-month rotation period, Chris, are you able to then choose or select what is your preference, or how does that work?
You can put a preference like first, second, third, and they will try to fit you in there, but nothing's guaranteed because I think there was about 100 people in this FLDP throughout the country. DC, Rockville, Maryland is where the company is headquartered. And so this was, corporate, but there were people in all other satellite offices as well who were in this program. And so you would choose your department and location of where you wanted to be. Of course, I wanted to be here in DC. It's where all the action is. It's headquarters. And, I always wanted to do more of like the M&A, corporate development, financial planning and analysis. But, a couple of times I was doing contracts or internal audit and things that were, really important to running that business, but not necessarily what I thought I wanted to do. But then when I was done with the assignment, very happy that I went through it.
Oh, that's good. Okay. So did you end up in M&A like you wanted to, or?
So I never actually got an M&A assignment as part of my rotation. However, I was able to cultivated a relationship with a gentleman named Peter Klein, who's vice president of M&A at Lockheed Martin, and he became sort of a mentor of mine. And he brought me in on a couple of special projects for some M&A, projects that they were doing, a couple of acquisitions and divestitures also, where I was able to act as an analyst, but it wasn't part of my assignment. He would pull me in, and I would have to do it, after hours, weekends, whatever, in order to get that exposure. But that was, it was great to sort of get that exposure to the extent that I did.
That's nice. How long were you at Lockheed for?
A little over 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then you decided, let me try something different or something else, or?
So then, it's like this winding road. There was a firm that I had met, the first firm that I worked for in DC, a large company. They had a huge office space downtown. There was a similar firm that did the same public policy consulting type work that was a subletter of them, that sublet office space from them. But they were a small boutique firm in there, just a friendly boutique firm that sublet office space. That firm this founder and CEO and I maintained a relationship while I was at Lockheed, just a friendly, professional relationship. Respected him a lot, looked up to him as a businessman. And he and I struck up a conversation that he needed a right-hand man, a CFO, COO type person to come in and help him run his business. And that's why I went and sort of took on that role and responsibility, helped him build out some internal processes, run his more professionalize his finance and accounting department and apparatus, and was there for almost 4 years. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. How that company, how big was it? How many people do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, it was when I started, it was like 4 or 5 people. And then when I left, it was about 15 people, right? Okay. So in the sense of these consulting firms like this, that's pretty decent growth. They're not like a tech startup or something that's going to, have hyper blitz growth or anything like that. But we almost tripled in size during my time period there. So that was fun.
That's great that you were able to get that role as a CFO, as a right-hand man, leaving Lockheed and going there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was great. I mean, look, I had total P&L control, right, and responsibility. It was not a huge P&L, right, relatively speaking to where I was coming from, but it was great to just have, I have responsibility for this. I'm able to disseminate the budget and report to the CEO and on performance and, cash management, all those sorts of things. And so I think it was a great experience to have that ownership.
Yeah, definitely. So you were there for 4 years, and then after that?
And that's when I started my firm, Quadrant Advisory. That's when, September of 2016 is when I launched Quadrant and went out on my own.
Going on 5 years. Okay.
I know.
Almost 5 years.
Crazy. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what made you decide to leave there and start Quadrant?
Well, I'd always had this entrepreneurial mindset. We talked about going back to when I was younger and, really was itching to go out and do my own thing and make my own business and company. And didn't know exactly what that was, right? When I was at that last firm I was at, even when I started there, before going there, I thought of just going out on my own, but I just didn't have a plan or a specific type of business that I wanted to be in yet. But while I was at that firm, I noticed, that similar size company, small businesses, emerging type companies, boutique firms, they had this need where they were too big or too complicated for just a basic bookkeeper, right? Mm-hmm. Well, their partners were doing that sort of finance and accounting work, and it wasn't the best use of their time. However, they didn't necessarily need to go invest in and pay for a full-time CFO or accounting team. Then they're going to have to worry about turnover and recruiting and all of that. And so there was this niche that identified, that's the void that we're going to fill. We're going to go after those types of companies, those small businesses, those emerging companies that just raised a round of funding, who need to focus on their core competency. They need somebody to maintain their financials, design and implement and manage some accounting operations, more so than just general bookkeeping. Bookkeeping is part of it, but it's just a foundation. There's a lot more that goes into it, right? And fill that void. And then, eventually we get to a point with our clients where they will have to hire internally, and we'll work with them to do that transition. And then we can remain on board as, augmented staff to help support until they're fully built out. And hey, if there's that's successful, we've worked ourselves out of a job. That's fantastic for us. So that was sort of the thesis behind it and why we started Quadrant Advisory.
I love that. I'm sure the moment when you thought of this, I'm sure you were back at the CFO role at this company, right? That's when the aha moment, I guess, came as far as possibly doing this.
Yeah, that's right. Because there were a plethora of firms just like the one I was at that we were interacting with, subcontracting with, that I knew they had this similar need and they didn't have me. Like Jeff was my former boss, had me. They had, again, a bookkeeper or one of the partners doing these things, and it just wasn't done correctly, or it wasn't the best use of their time. And so, I identified a little hot market there and said, this is, I see all these companies, I see this need. I'm going to first and foremost go after those types of businesses. And so that's where that aha moment came from, was by being in the trenches and dealing with firms just like ours who had the same pain point. Identifying that pain point is step one, right?
Yeah. Chris, before sort of jumping that entrepreneurial ledge off the cliff, were you like, let me reach out to some of these companies and see if maybe they, the needs there, but if they're open to that? Or did you just say, okay, I'm burning the ships, I'm leaving here, forget about it, let's see how this goes? What was your train of thought there?
A little bit of both. So I actually had the idea for Quadrant Advisory probably 2 years into my tenure at the old firm,
Okay.
But I sat on it for about 2 years. I had lunches with so many people. I talked to so many folks that were prospective clients or, met the profile for who a client would be, and just ran, or friends who, knew people, and just ran the idea by. People were probably sick of hearing me talk about this idea, like, oh, you're never going to actually, act on this, right?
Yeah.
I was sort of priming the pump, if you will,
Uh-huh.
And so ultimately, once I sort of had a good grasp, I sort of felt my tenure at my old firm, all right, it's time professionally to sort of take the next step. I decided that I was going to talk to my old boss and talk him into being client number one. And so if he would have said no, I don't know what, action I would have taken, if I would have burned the bridge and just jumped or what. But luckily, I was able to persuade him to sort of recalibrate a little bit of what I was doing for him, so that my bandwidth would go down slightly, or increase slightly, and switch me to a 1099 outside consultant. And he was foundation client number one. I could still keep paying my rent and keep my lights on, while then going out and legitimately launching and doing business development. And so all those people that I had been priming the pump for the last couple of years, they were now saw, oh, wow, he's actually doing it. Here's my website. I was able to get a little spiel in Politico magazine about going out on my own, and sort of leverage that to come to fruition. But a lot of the credit really goes back to my old boss and mentor, Jeff. He took a chance and allowed me to spread my wings and start the business. And credit goes to him for helping me in that regard.
That's great. That's great. So he was totally open to the idea as far as the role that you had as a CFO. You're going off on your own, and now you were 1099, as you said, right?
Yeah. Look, he made it very clear, like, his stuff needs to be very high priority, right? I can't let things drop. He's going to allow this change in our relationship for me. And, once, I think we both knew, once I got a handful of clients, that we would have to recalibrate once again, or maybe go our separate ways. But he was willing to take that chance and give me that opportunity. He started his business when he was 29 or so. Okay. And so he knows it, and he luckily, took a chance and invested in me and let me do that. And we actually ended up working together for over 4 years. It wasn't until last year that we just decided, his firm had gotten too big, my firm and other competing interests and priorities had gotten too big, that we, finally parted ways. And so I think the relationship lasted, and professionally, a lot longer than either one of us probably thought when he agreed to that on the front end.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier, now you're a business owner, entrepreneur, CEO, founder, and your role now changes. Besides obviously doing the day-to-day tasks for your number one client right now that you have, the only one in the beginning, you now are thrust into BD, the business development role, and you were lucky enough to get an article or something written up in Politico. Did that help at all with the launching of the business?
I don't think so. Honestly, I can't say that it actually led to any fruitful things, other than maybe some people reading it and, I became top of mind, but nobody contacted me or came to me and referenced that. Let's put it that way. But, I was able to put it on my LinkedIn, and I was able to sort of showcase it. And, but at the end of the day, back to, what I did when I was cutting lawns, I just started emailing and calling and getting lunch with every person that would listen to me. And, after a while, you convince a couple people to come on board.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. So some of those conversations you were having 2 years prior, did some of them end up saying yes and then, came on board?
Yeah, for sure. It didn't happen overnight though. I launched the company in September of 2016. I didn't have my second client until early 2017. And it's funny, there's these tailwinds and this snowball effect, right? You get one client, then you get two, and it takes a little while to get that second, it takes a little while to get that third, but then their momentum builds up, right? And so yes, some of those people that I talked to earlier on before launching the business, absolutely, I've ended up working with and work with some of them still now, and they paid off. Sort of keeping those relationships intact, cultivating and fostering those relationships before I even launched the business.
That's great. So now you're almost 5 years into it, and as far as the team size now, Chris, how does that look like for you?
We've got 12 folks right now on the team, and we're currently hiring 2 more. And so we've grown a lot, and very quickly, because it wasn't until early 2019, second quarter 2019, that I started hiring full-time staff. Before that, the first 2 years or so, 2.5 years of the business, it was me, and I had some 1099 subcontractors doing all the work. And then around April 2019, started investing more in the infrastructure and an internal team, and really building out the business more so than just Chris May with a band of 1099s.
Oh, wow. So basically just the last maybe 1.5 to 2 years, you've gone from sort of not zero, but you can say to now 12 full time on your team, right?
Yeah.
That's great growth. That's awesome. Congrats.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's been fun. It's been not without its challenges, and we're continuing to learn every single day.
Sure. Chris, if you don't mind sharing with the audience exactly, all the different services that you provide to businesses or even individuals of that.
Yeah, so we don't do very many individual services. What we do in that regard is, if we work with you in a business capacity, we'll help on some individual accounting needs. But the best way to think about what we do is anything that a accounting and finance department would do for a small business, we do it on an outsourced basis. Everything from bookkeeping through managing your accounts receivable, accounts payable, implementing new software tools, helping with payroll, helping with financial reporting, financial planning and analysis, strategic analysis and strategic planning and reviews, investor relations, M&A, due diligence, any sort of CFO work around other types of partner compensation or divesting, or looking at financial modeling as it pertains to hey, we're going to look at entering a different market or entering a different product space or different vertical. Let's sort of model this out and game it out. And so, man, it really runs the gamut. And so I really like to say, anything that an internal accounting or finance department would do for a small business, we do it, and we do it on an outsourced basis. And I always say the beauty of it too is that, our clients throughout the life cycle of their business are going to need almost all of that at one point, but almost never all at the same time. And so we sort of offer that bench to them. And so we can start with only bookkeeping, and they're grow, and they're dynamic companies that have different needs. And so as their needs change, we're able to implement our other experts or other teammates to help solve that and help work with them on those problems that arise. And our team is pretty young and entrepreneurial and tech savvy and very forward thinking in that regard. And so I think that also separates us to a degree. We're not your grandma's accounting firm, right? Let's put it that way. We really pride ourselves on being able to design and implement very, very efficient operations and systems as it pertains to accounting and finance for these companies and our clients.
That's awesome. As far as your ideal client, how does it look like? Is there a certain size, I guess, that you typically work with or you prefer to work with, or certain industries or niches?
Yeah, so, we're agnostic for the most part on a lot of this, right? And I think that we are able to fit into many, many, many situations. But if you look at our core group of clients and where we thrive, it's clients in the 1 to 50 employee range, right? And to be even more precise, if you really looked at the median or just weighed it, it would probably be the 5 to 25 employee range. We work with smaller businesses, we work with bigger businesses, but when you're in that post-seed range, Series A range as a small business, or when you're a startup lobbying firm or public affairs firm that's in that range of 10 employees, or when you're a digital media agency that's in that range, or a nonprofit, those are all the types of businesses we work with. We haven't done as much GovCon, even though I have a background from Lockheed Martin. You probably know, is there all the stuff that you're doing with small business owners. There's a lot of outsourced accounting providers to GovCon in the DC area. It's just a big market here, right? Mm-hmm. And so we chose to focus more on the small business, private sector, commercial operations as opposed to GovCon. But when you're thinking of it that way, there's not too many industries that we don't have experience in or that we haven't dabbled in.
Okay, that's great. That's great. And most of the clientele, I assume, is sort of local here in the DMV area?
About 70% of our business work is here in the DMV. We have some clients in New York, some clients out in the Bay Area, Austin, Texas, and then some sprinkled Chicago, some sprinkled here and there. But the majority of our client base is here in our backyard.
Oh, wow. So it's a little bit everywhere too. 30% it's outside of here. I'm curious, Chris, how are you typically, I guess, finding these clients, or are you doing anything as far as on the business development side?
Doing things like this with you, man.
Okay. So this helps. That's good.
We get some exposure. But I mean, to be quite frank, up until this point, it's been almost all organic growth, word of mouth, clients, referrals, things of that nature. We don't have any, sales staff. We don't have a huge marketing apparatus. We do a little bit of social media postings here and there, but there's not some major funnel that we're growing or anything like that. And we find that in our business, in our line of work, not too many people are going to hire somebody and give them the keys to the kingdom like they do in our line of work by clicking an ad online. There needs to be some innate level of trust. There needs to be some sort of referral or understanding that, hey, these people do good work, they're trustworthy, and they get, that the value that they're going to add. And to date, maybe we get to that point where marketing, outbound marketing and sales and stuff is really the key. But we have tended to focus more on the eggs in our basket and making sure that we are getting quality leads through referrals and other organic methods.
No, I agree. I think referral is huge, especially for your type of business. You mentioned social media earlier. I'm curious, have you had any luck there as far as, someone approaching you through there?
I mean, we've had a couple of tire kickers, but none that ultimately landed in any significant engagement. And, we did a rebranding actually about a year ago, a little less than a year ago. The original name of the company was CM Solutions. And, you can tell I didn't put too much thought into the name when I launched it, right? And it was time. We had started hiring folks. We were at like 7 employees at the time at the start of 2020. And it was time to just more professionalize the brand. And so we did a rebranding, and through the rebranding, we did this big, push out on social media. We implemented a MailChimp account and things of that nature. And we actually did get some 2 clients from that, but it was more so, I think, the rebranding than it was just the general postings that we do. I think the postings that we do on social media, what we try to add value to folks in things that are specific to what we know as subject matter experts, like, hey, here's what to look for in PPP, or here's what some challenges could be around, raising capital or things of that nature, and just sort of add value that way. And we haven't really found it to be this real big call to action, clicking mechanism for lead gen.
The two that you just mentioned, were they the newsletters or the email campaign that you were referring to?
Email campaign.
Well, you said you activated a MailChimp account, and then you said eventually you got 2 clients. So my question is, was that through the campaign that you started as far as the rebranding with Quadrant?
Yeah, that's right. So like I said, we did a handful of blasts on social, right? And then we also sent an email blast through MailChimp.
Sure.
And to those folks, I don't know which one they saw it on, but they emailed me like, hey, congrats, saw that you had, gone through this rebranding. Let's chat about working together type of thing. And to be honest, though, also, it wasn't totally inorganic. It was people I knew, like, tangentially, or a friend of a friend of a friend, or had talked to in passing about our services before, whether it was 6 months ago or 2 years ago, and that who just sort of came back to the trough, if you will. So
I think that helps. I'm just remembering, I also do newsletters as well. And just like you said, I was talking to a gentleman years ago, and I just happened to keep his email, and I do my own blast. And he reached out to me. He's like, hey, I have a property in here, it's in Montgomery County, Maryland, and I'm thinking of possibly selling it. And we started chatting. And this is a multi-million-dollar property. The fees, 6 figures plus, and newsletter, just like you said. It's just being top of mind, and you never know where it leads, whether it's coming from LinkedIn, or if you're doing something on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, or even just the MailChimp, your email blast. But it's just that consistency. Not many people continue and do it.
Yeah, I mean, look, as humans now, we're consuming so much content all day, every day. And, when you think of, nobody's going to remember Otto or Chris May very much for their real estate or accounting needs, unless maybe subconsciously we were in their brain from LinkedIn from earlier in the day or the day before, to your point, top of mind. I think that's very important now. So, who knows, we might bulk up some of that content creation stuff, but part for me personally, and I'm sure you do this well, as also, I am constantly, even in the age of COVID and Zoom, setting up these types of engagements, or getting coffee, or doing whatever I can to just cultivate relationships. And at the end of the day, it's really it's about relationships. With our business, we have very sticky client relationships. It's not transactional or anything of that nature. We really tend to work with our clients for years, and that's the way we like to work, and that's the types of relationships we like to build along the way.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I actually like, I love your initials, Chris, but the Quadrant, I like that name. How did that name come about?
So I need to give a lot of credit to my wife. She does our social media, and she helps lead the rebranding for us. So Quadrant Advisory QA, if you look at our logo, Quadrant is an ode to DC, right? You've got the 4 quadrants in DC, and that's just sort of unique to how the city is laid out. And if you look at our logo, it's got a Q, an A, and it looks like DC with the Q line being the Potomac River going through it.
Okay.
And so there's some creative, artistic elements in there that are far beyond my abilities that we sort of thought through. And so that's sort of the thought process behind it. And even though we're growing and starting to get clients outside of DC, and this will always be home in our headquarters.
Sure. No, I like it, because you don't know how many clients sometimes I run across. And like you said, they name the company ABC, whatever it is, or XYZ. And I'm like, okay, that's nice. I'm sure there's a meaning to it. Maybe it's their initials or the children's initials combined, but it's hard to remember initials if there's nothing personal, a personal attachment to it.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but Quadrant Advisory, you can remember that name, especially if there's a logo or something to it as well. So
I think I've never really told that sort of background, the logo. I think that should be a social media posting series that we do. That's like, learn why this is our logo.
yeah, with the meaning behind it. Yeah, I think that'll be great. Talk to your wife.
I will.
So Chris, what would you say now that drives you and motivates you?
I think results at the end of the day. I mean, I'm a very type A driven person. I love seeing results that our clients are getting, right? Their wins and their successes are our wins and our successes. And so when we're working with a client that, hey, they just started from concept and now they're about to go raise a Series B, and they went from 2 founders to 25 employees, and they're, past break even now on their P&L, and they're about to go raise however many millions of dollars. Love that. That's what gets me going. That's like the dopamine, hit to me that really, I love that. And so those successes are what drives me, with our clients delivering those types of results and value add along that journey. Love it. That's why we do what we do.
That's great. I feel you're almost at the beginning of your entrepreneurial journey, but with, you have 5 years still under your belt and you have a lot of past career experience. What would you say thus far is that you're most proud of in your business career?
In my whole business career, it's definitely QA. And I would say, outside of the client successes, because I can point to a handful of businesses that we've either helped turn around or that have far exceeded the founder or the owner's expectations and how they've grown. But honestly, I think I'm almost most proud of the team that we're building. We're up to 12 people now, and I have, been focusing a lot more of my time and energy and resources on the team and implementing a culture and really making sure that is the way that our vision needs to be. Our first value and our core values is clients first, team always, right? And so we always want to operate with clients first, but our team is just as important to us. And so we've built out a really, really strong group of professionals here, and QA wouldn't be where it is. Our clients wouldn't be where they are. And, the trajectory wouldn't be anywhere near where it is without the hard work and dedication that those folks are putting in. And so I think building that team is my proudest accomplishment, but I'm not even anywhere. Accomplishment might not be the right word, because I'm nowhere near done with that,
You're just in the beginning. Maybe you're first inning.
Yeah, I know. We'll see. We'll see. But definitely the people and the team, I think, is the thing I'm most proud of.
I'm glad you mentioned the team and the team culture there, Chris. How is that working out for you right now, especially during these times with COVID? I don't know if you and your team are working 100% remotely, or maybe a portion of it, or are coming into the office or not. How are you doing?
We're pretty much all remote at this point. We do have an office downtown, 1401 New York Avenue, and we will continue to maintain that office. I go in sporadically. A couple other folks might go in from time to time, but there is by no means a mandate or a necessity to go in, really, because we're not visiting clients or anything at this time either. But because of the nature of how our business is set up and sort of our ethos being very technologically driven and forward thinking, we were already operating with, video conferencing and on cloud software platforms and things of that nature. And so we haven't missed a beat. We've had to, sort of rethink how we get together as a group, and we're going to do like a Zoom trivia night thing next week and things of that nature. But it hasn't negatively impacted our ability to work together and or our ability to get together for fun. We have Slack channels where we joke with each other and share good things, and we during our staff meetings, we have a segment specifically for shout outs to give each other good feedback and stuff. And so I think continuing to do those small things is what's necessary until we're able to really come together in person and on a more frequent basis.
That's great. So you do see yourself coming back together eventually in the office, or do you think, how would it be, hybrid or?
Hybrid, yeah, I think, and we've actually polled our team about this, and how do you prefer it? And like I said, we'll maintain our office space downtown. We sublet through a private equity firm, actually, and they've been great and lenient, and they have beautiful space that we have a really good arrangement with. And so we don't want to give that up, and we will continue to have that there. But I just don't foresee us being a Monday through Friday, 9 to 5 in-person team anymore. We've hired a couple people that aren't in DC during COVID as well, which is working out pretty well at the moment. But our core team will always be here. Our, 75% will always be here. And so I'm thinking more like a 2-3 day a week in the office type of situation whenever things do, get back to more normal.
That's great. Do you think, Chris, you have any specific habits or skills that you use and implement daily that have helped you, whether personally or in business?
Specific skills, I think delegation is probably huge. I've really learned to hone, how to delegate well and how to empower the team to take care of tasks that are delegated. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, especially early on, and I went through this and I still struggle with it from time to time, you want to have your thumb on everything, right? Nobody's going to do it better than you type of thing, right? But you're never going to be able to grow if you don't train your team, trust your team, empower your team, and delegate well and delegate every day. As founder and CEO and other folks who run small businesses, you get inundated hundreds of emails a day, and the ability to delegate is a superpower, and the ability to say no is a superpower. And people are pulling you in a million directions, and you want to please everybody, and clients and family engagements and things. The ability to say no is huge.
That's great. Knowing what you know now, is there anything you would have done differently in your career?
In my career, pre-QA, no, because it brought me to here. In QA, I would have invested in the company and the team sooner. I think I took 6 to 12 months too late to do that, right? By doing it in early 2019. I should have done it in early 2018. But, there was some trepidation. Are we going to keep growing the way we're growing and things of that nature? And you got to just take that leap of faith and believe in yourself that, you're going to be able to deliver. And I think some of the growing pains from maybe waiting a little too long to do that, once we had gotten to a decent size, showed we had some quality control issues, a couple of, churning clients, where, okay, if I would have done this when we were a little smaller, implemented this infrastructure and these processes, it wouldn't have had as much heartburn as it did. So I think that's one lesson. And it was just me sort of overanalyzing it and being paralyzed to make that decision and waiting too long. I just should have done it earlier and invested in the company sooner.
That's great. So basically invested in higher sooner than what you did.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any big mentor or anyone that you learned from or looked up to? And if so, what did you learn from that person?
I think my former boss has been probably my biggest mentor in my business career. As he, like I said, he started his business super young. Even though we have totally separate businesses, we operate very similarly, and we have very similar outlooks on the world and on life. And I was able to sort of sit as his right-hand man when he was growing his business, see how he conducted himself in tough situations and hard situations and, in awkward situations, whatever it might be, and hone some of that emotional intelligence from him that I think has paid off a lot. And he's also an epic salesman. And I think that I've learned a lot from him in that regard as well on, really how to position your services and your product and relate to people really well. And so I would say he's probably been the biggest influence on me as far as business is concerned.
That's great. It is all about building relationships, like you said.
Yeah, no doubt about it. No doubt.
What advice would you give someone who just came to you and was starting off a new company? It doesn't matter, regardless of the field, tech or another industry.
If somebody was starting their own business, man, that's a good question. I feel like some of it's circumstantial, right? But again, it sort of goes back to just do it, right? Take that leap, believe in yourself, and hustle. Nothing's going to be easy. It goes back to when I was talking about when I was cutting, grass, and then when I started QA, like just hustle, get in front of as many people as humanly possible. It's a numbers game early on because you have no brand, you have no real reputation, and you got to talk to hundreds of people to get a few in front of you. So keep your head up, don't give up, and hustle your ass off.
What about from the financial or accounting or I guess CFO role, as far as someone coming and he's a solopreneur for right now. There's just a one man or one lady shop, And of course, they plan to grow and scale down the road. As far as getting their ducks or their financials from the financials aspect in the road, what suggestions or what advice or do you recommend, or maybe even software? Maybe they're too early for someone like you. What do you suggest there, Chris?
Well, look, we have an open door policy. Anybody is able to come to us, even if they're not going to sign on as a client. We'll pay it forward and help them get started. QuickBooks Online is our software of choice when it's the most ubiquitous one out there. Obviously, there's Xero and some others, but when you're at that stage, QuickBooks is just very easy and intuitive. I would say meet with a CPA and or somebody like us and make sure that your structure makes sense and make sure that you are accounting for everything properly, meaning you separate your business and your personal. Too many people muddy those waters very early on, and it becomes a major mess. Once you do start getting some momentum, if you don't bifurcate your personal finances and your business finances and do that properly, it can really give you some headaches later on in life. So talk to somebody like us, reach out to myself or ping us through our website or on social, whatever it might be. We're happy to give free consultations for these solopreneurs, even if it's not a right fit or too early. Talk to a tax CPA, right, a tax accountant, and make sure that you separate your personal and business finances.
That's great. Final question. Well, what does the next 5 years looks for you? What's in the future? What's the vision?
We're going to keep chugging along and growing and hopefully maintaining, the growth rates that we have. We're going to keep focusing on our core competencies and potentially bring on some other verticals that we don't currently offer, such as, tax or something like that in the future, and sort of add some of those tools to our tool belt. I think this is not in the near term, but within 5 years, we could potentially look at an acquisition of some sort of bolt on, maybe to get into a different geography that we really want to, sink our teeth into. But we really want to keep growing. We want to keep growing. We want to get better at the services that we offer. We want the team and the culture to continue to improve and our client services to continue to be top of the line, white glove. And we're just going to keep our head down and do what it takes to get that done.
Awesome. I love it. I know you're busy, Chris, with the business, and I know you have a newborn at home as well, and congrats to that. But in your free time, what do you like to do for fun?
Play golf. I like to go fishing, travel, go to the beach. That's pretty much it. Hang out with the wife, fish, play golf.
Outdoors
what I'm doing now. Yeah, I just got a brand new grill, and so I'm going to start grilling a lot more. And I cooked my first brisket, which turned out pretty decent, but I got some work to do with that. So I'm like fully embracing the dad grill life now.
Oh, that's great. Chris, where can people find you? If they want to reach out to you, find out more about you or your company, how can they reach you?
Sure. So our website is www.wearequadrant.com. Think of it like we are farmers, right? Like that commercial. So wearequadrant.com. Then my email address, always open, cmay@wearequadrant.com. You can email me. Hit us up on any of our Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn channels. You can direct message us on there as well.
Great. Chris, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, you got it. Otto, this has been great. I really appreciate the time and all the best to you. And if you need anything, give me a shout.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
Bye.